This review is going to be unscripted. My last two videos that I did were scripted lightly. They weren't as script intensive as I would have liked them to be, but this next video is going to precede a fully scripted video essay that is going to take me a while to compose and edit and upload. So I wanted to make a quick video talking about a film that I recently saw with some friends. And I know this film's been talked to death, and I know people have already gotten their reviews up, but I wanted to, throw in my 2 cents and to discuss the film Glass, which is the third in the M. Night Shyamalan trilogy that began with Unbreakable. Split was the second film in the trilogy that was a film that no one had any idea was connected to Unbreakable until the very end. And then this third movie, Glass, is the culmination of the trilogy. Now, my initial thoughts on Glass were that I felt like the criticism of it wasn't necessarily fair. And it's not that the criticism was not valid, but I felt like people were being too harsh on the film to the extent of the negativity that they had towards it being not unfounded, but being intensified. And by this, I mean the film in no way was a terrible film. It wasn't great. When reviewing it, I think that a lot of reviewers had certain ideas in mind of what the film should have been. And another thing is the criticism of the film isn't good either. It's a lot of harmful people just yelling, "You don't get the film," and it's beautiful. It's a classic 3-act structure, and it's just, you don't understand the film. And I don't think that's fair either. I think a lot of the critics, the people who were critical of it, did understand it. And I think that a lot of the criticisms of the film are founded, but I think the disproportionate amount of dislike of the film isn't warranted by the criticism. And by that, I mean, I think that the criticisms that are in place are very valid. There are certain plot holes, not like CinemaSin plot holes, but like actual plot holes that are valid to bring up as criticisms of the film. But I'm going to give my centrist viewpoints on the film and then discuss the criticisms that a lot of people had with the film, and then try and discuss the criticisms of the criticisms. So going into Glass, I've heard a lot of bad things. It doesn't make sense. They're not necessarily the most super powerful people, even though they're supposed to be superheroes. This is complete spoilers, by the way, complete and utter spoilers. I have to put that out right in front before I go into more detail for all 3 films, for Unbreakable, for Split, and for Glass. Glass, it seemed like people were hating on it too harshly. A lot of the criticisms were that the characters are supposed to be super, and it doesn't seem like they are. They just seem like they can perform stunts that a lot of people in the real world can do. And while that is fair, there's a lot of things that they can do that people in the real world can do. People can flip cars. People can bend steel to a certain extent. People can, punch holes in things. I think the message isn't within the context of the film itself. Glass even says that they're not necessarily like Superman. They're not necessarily the strongest of superheroes. They're people who are born and who are naturally gifted with these extraordinary abilities. So, for instance, in Unbreakable, David Dunn says and states multiple times in Unbreakable and even in Glass that he can lift, he lifts 350 pounds, and it's relatively not that hard for him. And he says people all across the world and all across, even in America, can do this in gyms. And that's true. People can lift 350 pounds, all across America. But I think what makes him and the other characters super is the fact that they can naturally do it. They don't necessarily have to work out and do those things. It's just something that they're inherently born with, and no one's inherently born with people can be born inherently stronger, but people aren't necessarily inherently born with the power to lift 350 pounds, and to flip a car, it takes a lot of effort to do that. And I feel like people kind of take that for granted. Just because people in our world can do it doesn't necessarily mean that people in the Unbreakable trilogy would not find that super. That's the other thing. A lot of people said the ending, right, of Glass is bad because valid criticism, right? It's people say that they won't, regular humans would not find what they did that super. It's just a really strong guy, right? James McAvoy's character of the Horde, and especially when he's the Beast, is just a really strong guy, right? He is bulletproof to an extent. He can take a shotgun blast at point range. He can take 2 of them in Split, he does. And so he finds that he's bulletproof to a certain extent, but only when he's the Beast, right? And so it's not necessarily this Superman, this god among people. It's just this one extraordinary individual who was born extraordinary in David Dunn and James McAvoy's character of the Horde and Mr. Glass. Glass, the criticisms that are fair are Glass being a mastermind. I don't think necessarily that he's very super until this film. He hasn't been shown to be this evil genius. He's just a guy who knows a lot about comic books, and he just happens to be the villain to David Dunn's hero because he knows how comic books work. And that's the one thing that kind of annoys me about this film, is that it's very beating you over the head with comic book lore and how comics work, and how constantly in the film they're talking about, oh, we're just so delusional because we watch so many comic book films. And I don't think that's a fair statement to say, and I don't think that I think when people criticize that aspect of it, it's fair criticism. It's not the brilliant Glass in any of these movies, Unbreakable included, are not the brilliant deconstruction of the superhero genre. It's just M. Night Shyamalan's version of the superhero genre. It's just how he views superhero properties. And when Glass comes out and they're like, oh, he's so smart, like we have to be careful, that doesn't make any sense. They haven't set that up. He was a guy who was able to orchestrate these accidents because he's read a lot of comics. He's just a guy who knows how to manufacture these because he's read too much. He's read a lot. He's a smart guy, but he's not brilliant. He's not brilliant in terms of super. He's not inherently born with super brilliance. He's just a smart dude. Like, he reads a lot. And James McAvoy's character, on the other hand, with his multiple personalities and the personality of the Beast, is absolutely super because he does survive 2 shots between bullets, right? Like, point blank. That's something that people can't do. That's super. But the rest of the stuff that he doesn't do isn't, the criticisms of the rest of the stuff he does is valid. He just flips a car. People can flip cars. People can bend steel to a certain extent. There are certain things that the characters can do that other normal people can't do. Be bulletproof, right? Not like have a shotgun when they shoot him not affect him. And David Dunn being able to knock down the steel door, like, that's very impressive. That's absolutely, like, no normal man can do that, even if you work out all day, every day, and drink all the protein in the world. Like, no normal man can knock down a steel door like he did by just shoving his shoulder in it. Takes him a minute. He's not the strongest, but it takes him a minute. So before I was making this video, I wanted to rewatch a video that I've already previously watched. It's on Dan Olson's channel, Folding Ideas. You should definitely check him out. I'm going to throw the link in the description below. But he talks about Glass, and his criticisms. If you want to see someone who actually has legitimate criticisms with the film, watch his video. It is definitely a great analysis of it. I feel like all the things he said were valid. But one of my points, though, is also with the criticism of the film, or the criticism of the criticism, I should say, is that people are being very toxic about it. They're being very, from what I've seen so far, and I'm sure that, I'm not saying everybody, I'm sure there are people out there who, like me, kind of fall in the middle, who, didn't love the film, but didn't hate it either. It's just kind of there. It's just a very, very stock standard film. I mean, I like this film better than the last X-Men movie, and I hated the last X-Men movie, but there are things that people are saying, like, you don't understand the film, or you just didn't get the subliminal messaging, or you didn't get the coding of the film. This video is more or less less of a review and more of a discourse of film and talking about critics and critics of critics. I feel like both sides were being a little harsh, but that's just my personal opinion. And one of the things that I wanted to say as well is that the rest of the films in the trilogy, I don't know, there are certain people that like or even love Unbreakable and they don't like Glass. And that's kind of confusing because Unbreakable is about as good as Glass, in my opinion. I actually liked Glass maybe a little more because of James McAvoy's brilliant performance. James McAvoy is such a great actor. Like, that dude, he goes from like being these different characters and being like one character's frail and one character's a diabetic and one character's a kid and one character's like a dude bro and one character's a flirty woman and one character's like high priestess, and when he turns into the beast, oh my God, it's so hard as an actor to transition between those types of characters. It's very hard to dramatically change your personality and your physicality too. Like, a lot of people don't realize this, but like most of the time when people put on plays and they do one person things, they can change their physicality, but not as fast and as rapid fire as James McAvoy in this film. It was brilliant. I believed that he had different personalities. I believed every character was a distinct character, and that's a rarity in acting. That it really is. It is such a hard thing to do, to make each character believable. Such a hard thing to do. I know many actors. I was an actor in high school, at least myself, and it's such a hard thing for people to pull off. And the physicality of the role, geez, James McAvoy's yoked. Like, I don't know what his workout plan is, but it's intensive. And the neck popping is so good. I like the Beast as a character a lot. I just enjoyed how violent and vicious he was. I really liked, I'm one of the minority in the situation, in the criticism. I actually really enjoyed the final fight between everybody. I will say, though, a lot of problems that people had with the film towards the end are very justified. Again, spoilers for all these films. They just die at the end, and it makes sense in the context of what Glass had planned, but like that's the thing. People, what would make him think that people would believe that they were super without, more proof than he gave? I think I didn't really like that part. And the third act made the second act basically moot, like a moot point. Like, it nullified the second act, and I didn't like that. I liked the second act a lot. That was my favorite part of the film. I like are you super or are you not? I really liked that, and the conversations that they had, and just them being in the asylum, I really enjoyed that. But the third act, just having Sarah Paulson's character be part of a secret society and say, yeah, you guys are actually super, it's very damaging to the movie as a whole, because it undercuts all that came before it. A lot of people, because it's an M. Night Shyamalan film, were expecting a twist, but I don't think the twist was very well done. Her telling Bruce Willis while he's in a puddle, drowning. That's not a good way to wrap it up. Even if you're done with these characters, that's not a good way to wrap it up. I don't know how they would do it better. I like the side characters a lot. I did enjoy them. Son of Bruce Willis, the girl who was captured in Split, and the mother of Glass. I liked them a lot, and I liked I did like the explanation of the side, all the main characters being in one place. I like that. But that was like the 400th comic book reference at that point, so I can totally understand why it's so annoying to some people. Him just constantly talking about comic books and being very meta about it too. Being very meta about talking about comic books, like, this in the comic book, the villain would do this. It's like, yeah, we get it. Like, it's a comic book film. We get it. Like, it's a superhero movie. Like, we don't need to be reminded. So I wanted to touch on as well, it was a lot of people, I was seeing a couple of people talking about how Bruce Willis, and even Dan says this in his video, Bruce Willis is having, it's weird because in Unbreakable, they made it seem like the water wasn't necessarily his kryptonite, right? It was just something that he learned that he was breakable, there was something that he was weak to, right? And it wasn't because it made him physically weak. It just, he couldn't swim, and he knew he had to have oxygen, right? He wasn't as infallible as he thought he was. And I think Sam Jackson in Unbreakable does make the point of saying that's your weakness is water, because he had a moment when he was a kid that he almost drowned, and that was a traumatic experience for him. And it's kind of like the New 52 Martian Manhunter, right? Martian Manhunter doesn't have a necessarily a physical weakness to fire, but he has a psychological one to fire, and it hurts him, and he allows it to hurt him. And Bruce Willis needs to breathe, right? He has a physical weakness to that, and he can't swim, so he gets weak because he's afraid of dying like all of us. And that's something that I think when they turned it into a physical weakness, like his actual kryptonite, I think that took away from the film. It should have just been his emotional weakness, you know? And I think Sarah Paulson at one point does say that, but then it's undercut in the final battle by Samuel L. Jackson telling the Beast, he said, "Oh, water's his weakness, water's his kryptonite, use it." That doesn't make any sense. He's not physically weak to water. It's just that he can drown. It doesn't, that part, I didn't like that part. That's one part that I definitely did not like, and that was what I wanted to touch on as well. Through the criticisms of the criticisms, I feel like that criticism is very valid. The fact that they never said that it was his kryptonite. It just was implied that he was weak to it because he could drown. There's a scene, and it's referenced in this film, of Bruce Willis's character trying to talk his son down to not shooting him because he doesn't know if he's as unbreakable as his son thinks. His son says, "You're a superhero. You can't be broken." And he takes a gun and is going to shoot him, and they have to talk him down out of it, because if he's not a superhero, then his son just killed him. If he's just a strong guy, then his son just killed him, you know? And that's something that I enjoyed, you know, in the film. If you were in a universe where superheroes existed, you wouldn't want to test to see if you're bulletproof. Who wants to get shot? And that's something that's, you know, kind of glanced over in this film, and that theme. They could just be regular people. They could just be exceptional. And that's something that Sam Jackson states in this film, and is totally undone by the secret society. He says, superheroes are based off of extraordinary people, right? They're just people. They're not Superman. They're just extraordinary. He says that he thinks they chronicle it, and then the secret society acts like the superheroes, and the film as well undercuts that and acts like the superheroes are these godlike beings, which they're not. They are breakable. You know, they have these powers. Some of them are bulletproof, and some of them are smarter than the average person, but they're not infallible. They can be stopped. And that's something that I think the film doesn't do a good job of portraying. Now, I've crapped on this film a little bit. I've complained about this film in this review, and a lot of critics have complained about it. But I think the criticisms, while they are valid, I think that the film as itself is an enjoyable watch. I think there are parts that are very good in the film. I'm still thinking about that neck popping, the Beast neck popping, and even the fight with him and Dunn when they're throwing the table back and forth at the beginning. That's a pretty cool fight. I like that a lot. I do want to say that the point of this video was to say my weird centrist opinion of the film. It's okay. That's the final review. It's no the favorite. It's no Black Klansman. Well, that was my review of Glass. If you guys like this video, don't forget to subscribe. And also, I have a Patreon, so if you guys want to donate to that, there's a link in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, and also check out the rest of Dan Olson's catalog. He's a great YouTuber and definitely had a lot to say about this film, and I really enjoyed his video. And so I'll give you a link to his YouTube channel in the description below, and I will see you guys later. Bye.